Hello and welcome to Fireside Fairy Tales. If you've never been here before, my name is Rory and you're watching Varietal Literature's YouTube page. Cozy little corner of the internet for people who love narrative. And what I'm going to be doing here tonight is reading, you guessed it, fairy tales. If you are watching this live, you should know that there is currently a live chat going that you can join in. Sorry, I'm adjusting some sound for myself. That you can join in. And there's already a little crop of potatoes growing in there that includes Jum Store GS, Tammy Morelli, Uncle Kitty, who's officially retired now. Congratulations, Uncle Kitty. I don't think I missed anybody. Sorry if I did. If you want to join in that crowd, they're talking about their days and the stories that we read. If you're not watching this live, though, one of the great benefits is down in the description below, there will be timestamps, and you can click on one of those timestamps to go to whatever story interests you. We're going to be reading two stories today, both from the same book, which is Popular Tales and something of the... Let me get the actual title up here. Clan Traditions and Popular Tales of the Western Highlands and Islands. Which is a rather famous Scottish, well, I was going to say fairy tale collection or folktale collection, but it's not just that. It's a lot of different things to do with Western Highlands culture from, I believe, the 19th century. And the book itself, rather, not the traditions. Traditions are much older. Anyhow, we're reading two stories. They are said to be related. You'll see how. Not very directly, but it does note in the text. The first one's about two brothers, and the second one's about two sisters and a curse. They are fun stories, I think. I especially like the first story, but I think that's less to do with it being like a great narrative thing, but so much as I just enjoy how it's told. It's very to my taste. And the second story has a lot of what you would look for in a slightly spooky, haunting curse kind of way. So those are the two stories we're reading tonight. They're both from the Western Highlands of Scotland. I don't think I really have much more to add. That seems like a brief intro, but I'm sure we're all wishing I was briefer on the intros. Jump Store's making a pumpkin cake, this time with chocolate frosting. Oh, I've never had pumpkin and chocolate. I imagine it would work. That's not any reason, obviously, it wouldn't. All right. It is the Western Highlands, so I think we'll have some rain. Just as a note, obviously, maybe not, but it should be obvious. I don't speak Gaelic, Scottish, or otherwise. So there is some Gaelic words in here that I'm not going to be reading unless I have to. And if I do, and you do know Gaelic, I'm sorry. It is unfortunately a language that, especially for these older texts, it's hard to find people who will give reliable pronunciation guides. Some of the other languages it's easier, but Gaelic was a harder one for me to find pronunciations of. So yeah, I mean, you'll just have to cringe past or maybe listen to a Scottish person. I mean, and actually from Scotland, Scottish person, not just descendant. Uncle Kitty says no one speaks Gaelic. That's not true. Our first tale of the night comes to us from the classic text, Clan Traditions and Popular Tales of the Western Highlands and Islands. And it is a part of its folktale section. And this one's called The Two Brothers, A Tale of Enchantment. In early times, long ago, it is said that the island of Mull was uninhabited, except by a few families who were living on the south side of Carseg, which I'm sure is not how that's pronounced, in that part of the island known as the Ross of Mull. These families lived isolated from the rest of the world. None of them had ever seen anyone from anywhere else there, and none of themselves had ever left the place. They had no boats, and they said the other islets and land that they were seeing opposite were other worlds. One day, then, they saw coming on the sea before them, from the mainland, a speck, and when it came near, they compared it to a horse with a tree standing on its back. But when it came to shore, it was indeed a boat made of wicker work, covered with hides, with one man in it, who had some drink with him and a quantity of hazelnuts for food. On account of this boat being covered with hides, they named him the Cowhide Man. On landing, he told them how he had left home out of curiosity to see other places, and that was the first place he was able to reach. He is said to have come from Ardenkapel, in the district of Lorne, on the mainland. He stayed a long time with them, as they treated him kindly, being much pleased with him. He taught them new ways that were useful to them in their everyday life, and by his skills and knowledge, promoted their welfare in many ways. On seeing that they were not utilizing the milk of their cows and goats by making cheese from it, he asked them the reason for this, and they told him that they did not know what cheese was, as they had never heard of it nor seen it, and would like well to know how it was made. They had the art of making butter among them previous to his coming. He took in Lusbud Belatan, marsh marigold, and putting its stalks in the milk, turned it to curds and whey. I've never heard of this, so I found it very interesting. This is said to be the first cheese that was made in Mull. Sometime nearly a year after this, another boat, or as they described it, a horse with a tree on its back, was seen coming in the same way. This one came ashore at Loch Spalvey, further eastward, and had one man in it also, whom they named the one in the skin coverings. He was brother to the one who came before, and had come in search of him. The two strangers and the natives were agreeing well together, and the brothers began to build a boat when they found wood abundant in Mull. When the boat was finished, they named it the Six-Oared Boat. And when it was fitted up and made ready for sailing, the two brothers took a crew with them and set off in it, to go to one of the other worlds that they were seeing before them. And they reached Jura. But the natives of the island would not let them land, as they'd never seen a boat before, and so they stoned them away from the shore. They then went to Colonsay, but the Colonsay men were equally hard-hearted. They attacked them and tried to blind them by throwing sand about their eyes. It was then that they took to the Green Island, the name by which Islay was then known, and there they arrived at a more favorable time, no one being before them at the shore. They drew up their boat on land and went on to see if there were people to be found on the island, or if they would meet with anyone who could direct them to a house. The first person they met was an old man who was watching cattle. He thought they belonged to the island, as no one was known to have ever come to or gone away from it. The first of the brothers who came asked the old man to give him information about the place, and the old man remarked, "How curious your speech is, if you were born in this island." He said, "No, I am not a native to this island." The old man said, "And if not, what has brought you here?" "The reason of my coming is to ask what you can give, and give what I can may." The old man said it was nightfall, kindled a fire, and they sat with him till daylight. When men and houses were to be seen. The Islay men were hospitable to the strangers, who remained a full year and built 7 boats for them. And the elder brother married a woman of the country, and after some time he thought of returning to Mull again. Having prepared his boat, he set off, taking his wife and the others with him, and set his course northwards. They had gone not far when a thick mist came on, which darkened their world. And as they had no compass and could see no land, they drifted until the boat went into a shore. This was the first appearance of land they'd saw since leaving Eilean Gorm. And a big man came down where they were. They never saw his equal for size. And he caught the forepart of the boat and drew it up above high the watermark, with them all in it. And he invited them to go to his house, and they went with him and were made welcome. The daughter of the house, on being asked by the elder of the 2 brothers for a drink, brought a 2-hooped wooden dish, full of milk, and set it on the floor beside them, and went away. And one of the strangers rose to lift the dish, and he could not. And when the 3 of them rose, but it defied them all to lift it. She came back, finding the dish as she left it, and said, "If ye quenched your thirst, it is not a wanton for the measure." The cowhide one replied, "We have not been accustomed to stoop like cattle. When we take a drink, we could not lift the dish." At that she caught the wooden dish by the ear in her left hand and held the drink to them all. "Where have you come from?" she said, "or where are you going?" "We came from the dark blue sea isle," he said, "and are going to the hilly isle." "That is Mull," she said, "Mull of my love, Mull of little men." They passed that night cheerfully together, and went to put off to sea next day, but when they tried to move the boat and get it afloat, they might as well have attempted to move the runs of Islay. They could not move it. The young wife who came with them from Islay said then, "I know where we are. We are in the Green Isle that is under spells, but I have a gift that will let us leave it." And she told those with her how her mother had at parting given her a cap, saying, "If you are ever put in a strait, put it on, and you must at the same time bend your head to the ground as low as your feet 7 times. She had the cap in her belt, and she told them to sit in the boat and take the oars. She then stood in their midst, touched the cap, and bent her head, and it went up to her breast. The next time it went up to her neck, and the third time to her chin, and then as she bent her head at the fourth time, it went up past her mouth to her nose. The next time it reached her eyes, and then her forehead, and at last the top of her head. And then the boat was off. The mist was still there, and they asked the eldest brother in which direction they were to set their course. And he told them to follow the flight of birds, as they went shorewards in the evening, and would guide them to land. And there is a saying about the homecoming of birds and fish. The birds of the universe go westward, and the fish of the deep eastward. During that night the younger brother, the one of skins, called out that there was a mound before them. And the brother who was in the after part of the boat said, "It is Tor without grass." And it has got the name of Torrens to the present day. They reached Mull shore, and when it was day they ran in the boat at a narrow strait that was like an opening in a dike. And before they got them from the tulpins, the oars were broken. The place is still known as the narrow strait of broken oars. And they got on shore and went home and told where they had been and what had happened to them. The person now above 70 years of age, from whom the above story was taken down almost word for word by the writer, said that he heard the story when he was a young man, and that the following story, that of the two sisters, was a continuation of it. The incidents of the stories occurred during the absence of the two brothers from the place, and were told to them by the natives, in return for the story of their own adventures. The name Torquil, which occurs in the story, and the belief in witchcraft occult power indicated, suggests that the colony in Mull came originally from Lachlan, and that the story belongs to a later period of history than that of the two brothers. But the story is as follows. We'll read that one in a moment. GS says, I wonder what the dish lifting is about. Well, they're big, right? They say that they don't call him a giant, but it seems implied he's a giant because he lifts the whole boat up onto the above the waterline with all of them in it. So then his daughter brings in a bowl of milk, but it's obviously so massive that they can't lift it. All right. So, for those who were keeping up with the story, the gist of it is, it's a story of a journey of two brothers to some islands around the Western Highland coast. And it serves as one of those, this is why it's called this. They're supposed to be like the first people from the mainland who went out and saw these places. And that is the gist of the story. And for me, I really find those kinds of stories great. I understand that they don't have the excitement and adventure of a lot of other things, but it to me, I feel like the roots of a lot of Tolkien is in that kind of folklore. Uncle Kitty says, I think the marsh marigold things for the cheese was a joke. I did not have time today to look it up. All I can say is I've never heard of such a thing, but I don't know. Uncle Kitty says they're apparently medicinal if cooked and absolute poison otherwise. I mean, that doesn't mean they weren't using it to make cheese. I mean, this was an era where they did things that were poisonous. But yeah, I've never heard of such a thing. Basically, anything that would raise the pH of milk is probably going to... Yeah, is probably going to be enough to separate it, so it's possible. Be interesting if it was just poison cheese, though. Just says no Burger King back then. Yeah. You had to get poisoned the old-fashioned way, not the Burger King way. I'm glad I'm not in any way trying to get sponsors, because the amount of brands that I will have alienated by this point. All right. So, just to put it in context, what was being said at the end there, Tammy says, no tea tonight, Rory, no tea tonight. Too warm. Won't be tea till like September for this old husky. And no fun pops tonight. I didn't have any money for it. But I'm sure Jump Store is tea. Let one of their milkshakes set a bit and see what it separates it. Oh, at Burger King, Uncle Kitty says. It separates into the powder that made it. Okay. So, yeah, just to put in context, obviously these are collected tales that are being told to him, in the 19th century in Scotland and the Western Highlands. And so the author was saying that the first story, the two brothers traveling around the islands, that story is said to have occurred at the same time as this story, The Two Sisters and the Curse. But that the author's opinion is that the beliefs set about in the Two Sisters one seems to imply that it must have happened later. Who knows? For two reasons, who knows? It's hard to really track anything really concrete in oral histories. We do have actually a lot of reason to believe that they're reasonably accurate a lot of the time. Like, they have embellishments and so on, but they're probably more accurate than you would think. However, the second problem is that, the state of this kind of research in the 19th century wasn't great. A lot of things, a lot of ideas. It was the kind of time where, like, you could just write a book, and if you thought it might be the case, you would just extend that opinion as if it were fact. Which is why I don't read a lot of the commentary on old folklore books, is because they're often just utterly baseless. Jump Store says, just green tea and spearmint. Oh, yummy. And then you're going to mix that with a Burger King milkshake. I'm going to get angry messages now. Okay. Our next story comes to us again from clan traditions and popular tales of the Western Highlands and Islands. The story is called The Two Sisters and the Curse. And it concerns, count it, 2 sisters and a curse. Also has some savage burns. 2 sisters were living in the same township on the south side of Mull. One of them was known as the lovely Marianne and had a fairy sweetheart. Let me pause there. That's not a euphemism. Her sweetheart is of the fae, is a fairy. It's very important. Who came where she was, unknown to anyone, until one day she confided her secret to her sister, who was called Elsa, and told her how she dearly loved her fairy sweetheart. "And now, sister," she said, "you'll not tell anyone?" "No," her sister answered, "I will not tell anyone. That story will as soon as pass from my lips as it will from money." But her sister did not keep her promise. She told that secret of the fairy sweetheart to others in the town. And when he came again, he found that he was now observed by the town. And so he went away and never returned. nor was he seen or heard of ever after by anyone in any place. Well, when the lovely sister came to know this, she left her home and became a wanderer among the hills and hollows, and never afterwards came inside of a house door to stand or sit down while she lived. Those who herded cattle tried frequently to get near her and persuade her, return home. But they were never succeeded further than to hear her crooning a melancholic song in which she told how her sister had been false to her, and that the wrong done to her would be avenged on the sister or her descendants, if a fairy has power. On hearing that Elsa was married, she repeated, "Done Elsa is married and has a son Torquil, and the evil will be avenged on her or on him." What she hummed in her mournful song was, "My mother's place is deserted, empty and cold. My father who loved me is asleep in the tomb. Friendless and solitary, I wander through the fields, since there is none in the world of my kindred but a sister without pity." She asked, and I told, out of the fullness of my joy. There is none nearer of kin to know my secret, but I felt, and this brought the tears to my eyes, that a story comes sooner from the lip than from the knee. And also it notes that the literal translation, because this is translated from Gaelic, is "raindrip on my sight," which is an excellent way of describing tears, don't you think? She was then heard to utter these wishes, and this is the savage burns. Next time you go and work and someone makes you angry, you quote this verse to them. "May nothing on which you have set your expectations ever grow, nor dew ever fall on your ground. May no smoke rise from your dwelling in the depth of the hardest winter. May the worm be in your store and the moth under the lid of your chest. And if a fey being has power, revenge will be taken, though it may be on your descendants." Then has the both verses in Gaelic. "Elsa married and had one son, and in some way her afflicted sister heard of this, and she then added to her song, 'Done Elsa was married, and she has a son Torquil, brown-haired Torquil, who can climb the headland, bring the seal off the waves, the sickle in your hand is sharp. You will in tooth swaths reap a sheaf.'" Whatever gifts the brown-haired only child of her sister was favored with, besides other, he was a noted reaper, but this gift proved fatal to him. For when he grew up to manhood, he could reap as much as 7 men, and none of them could compete with him. He was then told that a strange woman was seen coming to harvest the fields at autumn, and after the reapers had left, that she would reap a field before daylight next morning, or any part of the ripe corn that the reapers could not finish that day. In whatever field she began, she left the work of 7 reapers finished after her. She was known as the Maiden of the Cairn, from being seen to come out of a cairn over opposite. I'll let you guys Google cairn. I think most people know what it is at this point, but it's easier to see than to have me describe. One evening then, brown-haired Torquil, who desired to see her at work, being later than usual of returning home, on looking back saw her beginning in his own field. He returned, and finding his sickle where he had put it away, he took it with him, and after her he went. He resolved to overtake her, and began to reap the next furrow, saying, "You are a good reaper, and I will overtake you." or I will overtake you." But the harder he worked, the more he saw that instead of getting nearer to her, she was drawing further away from him. And then he called out to her, "Maiden of the cairn, wait for me, wait for me." She said, answering him, "Handsome brown-haired youth, overtake me, overtake me." He was confident that he would overtake her, and went on after her till the moon was darkened by cloud. He then called to her, "The moon is clouded, delay, delay. I have no other light but her. Overtake me," she said. He did not, nor could he overtake her, and on seeing again how far she was in advance of him, he said, "I am weary with yesterday's reaping. Wait for me, wait for me." She answered, "I ascended the round hill of steep summits. Overtake me, overtake me." But he could not. He then said, "My sickle would be the better of being sharpened. Wait for me, wait for me." And she answered, "My sickle will not cut garlic. Overtake me, overtake me." At this she reached the head of the furrow, finished reaping, and stood still where she was, waiting for him. And when he reached the head of his own furrow, he caught the last handful of corn. And I'm going to pause here and read you the footnote, because this ending depends on a bunch of traditions that we do not have. So on the last handful of corn, there was a custom at one time that the last handful of corn that was cut, and which finished the harvest, was taken home by the reaper, who was usually the youngest person in the family who could reap. The bunch was tastefully decorated and kept at least until the following year as the harvest maiden. So it's a decoration of the last bit collected, made up and put in the house, and it is called the harvest maiden. As it was the custom, it being the harvest maiden, and stood with it in one hand and the sickle in the other, and looking at her steadily in the face, he said, "You have put the old woman far from me, and it is not my displeasure you deserve." Pausing again to read the footnote for another tradition. It was also a custom in other times for old women to go about asking charity, and if infirm, they were carried about from house to house in villages, and whoever was last in township to finish the reaping of his corn had to maintain one old lady that year, and the same thing might happen to him the next year. When the run-rig system was common, the last furrow of corn was sometimes left standing, as no one could be got to own it through fear of having to keep the old woman for a year. So when he says, "You've put the old woman far from me, and it is not my displeasure you deserve," that's what he's referring. She said, "It is an evil thing early on a Monday to reap the harvest maiden." On her saying this, he fell dead on the field, and never more drew breath. The maiden of the cairn was never afterwards seen nor heard of, and that was how the sisters' wishes ended. Now that second one, I don't quite know what it is about Monday. Unfortunately, there's no note on that. But I'm sure there is an explanation out there. GS says, interesting welfare system. Yeah. It is an interesting system, isn't it? Imagine being, the person who's being passed around in such a way. That would feel terrible. That is the story of the two brothers and the two sisters, and the curse supposedly occurred at the same time, though who knows. It is our last story of the night, so if you're just here for stories, that's fine. But there is a section of this book that I don't really see when I would ever have a chance to use it. Like, I wouldn't do like a whole stream on it. But there's a second section here called Games of the Western Highlands, like traditional games. It isn't a lot of things that you wouldn't expect, but it's things like wrestling matches, for example, and they have a bunch of sort of strange little rituals that go around it and blah, 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 blah. But I wanted to read to you this description of this very strange game. A lot of information is going to come at you quickly. I will say that the gist of the game is it's kind of a memory game. It's a game where, like, can you remember and pull it up fast? I'm just going to read it to you as like a bonus because it was interesting to me. Another game popular on these occasions was one of forfeits, known as The Parson's Mare Has Gone A-Missing. Every boy and girl in the company has a false name. By company, they just mean the group playing here. Has a false name given for the occasion, such as Old Cow's Tail or Rooster on the Housetop. The king or overseer commencing the game, they don't mean king, though I imagine it could have been a king at sometimes. They just mean like the person who is like in charge of the game. Commencing the game says, "The parson's mare has gone a-missing, and it is a great shame that it should be so. Try who stole her." Looking round the circle, he fixes upon someone and mentions him by the assumed name. So he fixes, for instance, on the one to whom the name of Old Cow's Tail was given, and the person mentioned and denoted was bound at once to answer, saying, "It's alive from you." So he goes, "Was it you, Old Cow's Tail, or was you, Old Cow's Tail?" And they go, "It's alive from you." To which the answer is, "Who then is it?" And the person accused at once passes it on by mentioning someone else, such as Rooster on the Housetop. And the same query and answer, "Who then is it?" so on, is passed on. The first one who fails in giving a ready reply has to submit to give a forfeit which the ruler keeps in security till all have been exacted. And then someone bends down and rests his head upon the king's knee, and when the forfeits are held upon his head, and he is made to award the punishment of redeeming them. He does not see whose forfeit it is, and the penalty imposed is sometimes very ludicrous and impossible. One, for instance, has to sit on the fire till his stomach boils. Another is to go out to the hillock in front of the village and bawl out 3 times, "This is the one who did the mischief, and who will do it tonight yet." This game requires great readiness and retentiveness of mind, the attention being kept continually on the strain in case one's own assumed name be called out, and a readiness to pass the accusation on to another. It loses me a bit on the second half of that game because I'm not 100% sure what even that looks like, what that means. But what I will say is the idea of like pointing at someone and then you got to remember like one of the fictitious names in the groups and not use the person's real name. It's an interesting game. There is actually several games in here, things like hide and seek and whatever else. But that's the one that was like the most unique to me. Uncle Kitty says it's not as brutal as ferret legging. Well, it's brutal in a different way. There we go. Anyhow, I don't really have much more to add today. I was just reading the chat there. Other than to say thank you, folks, for hanging out with me. Well, yeah. Sorry, I'm spacing out here. Thank you, Tammy Morelli, GS Jumstore, Uncle Kitty, anybody else who's sort of hiding in the background, of course. for hanging out with me. And as always, see you next week. And I'll keep the fire going. You have yourself a good sleep.